Hey, welcome to Creadores Creativos. This is a conversation with friends where we talk about how they are bringing their best ideas into reality, also while they enjoy the process. So I have Ben here today. Ben is a new and old friend from the Notion ambassadors community. I've been enjoying talking with him and reading all what he shares in the Slack group. And I've been very curious to learn more about him. We've talked about relationships, communication, tech, and I think he's a very interesting person. So this is why he's one of my first guests, actually, my first after my wife. So, uh, Ben, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And I would
Yeah,
like to start with what's a good memory of your childhood?
good memory of my childhood. Well, I was very lucky in that my father was a semi-pro basketball player, and he moved to Europe in his early years, and that was where he met my mom. And so my parents have both did a lot of traveling when they were younger, and I think my childhood was kind of a little bit van life, a little bit, adventure. My mom worked for the airlines at one point, and back then in like the 80s and 90s, when you worked for an airline, you got a lot of free travel. It's not so much the same anymore, but so we were very privileged in that we got to see a lot of places very young. So it's been a big formative part of my childhood is travel and adventures like that.
And do you have like the memory of the first time that you went into an airplane? How do you felt?
Maybe not the memory, but yeah, like I think when I was 18 months old or so, we were on
Oh,
a 18-hour flight from New York to my father was teaching at a university. He was the athletic director in Dharan, Saudi Arabia. So I have like these, early experiences with really long flights and, stories of my dad carrying me up and down the aisle for 10 hours, like while I was screaming and probably making all the other passengers very uncomfortable the entire time.
oh my! And now, have you fly with kids? How do you feel that? Do you remember your earliest years?
Yeah, it's always a different experience every time, every flight is different. So yeah, I just try to put some headphones on and zone out or play video games or something.
I was thinking to with a kid next to me. He was 3 years old, and he was eating a lot of candies and sugar. And then he started kicking the seat from. It was a lady, and the other girl next to me was like, "Oh, this is so annoying." But yeah, I remember that it's not very easy to be a parent, so I try
Hmm.
to help the dad with some wet towels to clean their kid. And yeah, uh, always fun experience with kids in flights.
Hmm.
So one of the things that I think we, as knowledge workers or in this century, we've been doing is learning. So how do you define learning, and how do you like to learn?
How do I define learning? I mean, it's I think gradual improvement, the ability to have a place there where you are versus where you want to be, and bridging that gap. So sometimes that gap can be physical, it could be mental, it could be a knowledge gap. So for me, it's like, what are the tools and the things and the techniques that we employ in order to bridge that gap and move us forward to where we want to be in knowledge? And sometimes it's where we want to be or where we want to go, and sometimes it's just a matter of something that we have to do, and then it's not as fun. But
Yeah.
yeah, that get where are we going from A to B to me is what conditions learning.
And how did you learn as a kid? Would you say that that was a good experience with learning, or would you do things differently with the next generation? How would you change the educational system?
Um, I think I've generally been a pretty what they call autodidactic learner. Like you put me in front of things and I will mess around with them and figure things out kind of on my own. Um, and I think in terms of the different types of the ways that people learn and their capabilities, for me, it's like the rote memorization and recounting of knowledge is much less useful than applicative knowledge. And so those putting children and even adults in those experiences where they can apply knowledge and get, hands on early is really impactful,
hands on.
for people for retaining information. Um, so yeah, I think, that's the way I like to learn, is just kind of getting into the middle of things. And I don't really like to do like a beginner to advanced type of learning, because
Mm,
we have different things and different capabilities that we're going to be advanced or beginner at. And so, you know being able to sort of have that experience be malleable, so that I can get really advanced if I wanted to right
yeah.
away, but then I could pull back and say, okay, I need a little bit more fundamentals here. And so that optionality, I think, is really key for learning environments.
Yeah, and you with Marie have this no master. Sorry, I forgot the name. Master in
Notion mastery.
Notion mastery. Yeah,
Hmm.
I got that mixed. So how was the idea behind that? How it started, and what are you using the tools or ideas to teach others with this in mind on how
Hmm.
we learn?
Yeah, so Notion mastery was born from uh, Marie being exposed to the tool, and at the time we were using Asana to manage our project. So 3 4 years ago, we were a full service web agency. I was doing applications and mobile apps and things like that. Marie was doing online courses, and we had a software as a service called Okie Dokie, which was for launching courses. So it's kind of similar to something like Teachable or Thinkific. So we ran that for 5 years, and
5 years.
Notion. Yeah. So we had Asana to manage all of our client projects and our internal projects and whatnot. And then, Marie, somehow, I don't remember how she discovered Notion. She was turned on early on and was kind of just obsessed with it very early. And I started noticing that she was kind of not doing anything in our Asana. So like things were kind of getting out of date. And I was like, what's going on over there? And that was when she tried to like kind of convince me, like, oh, we should move everything over to Notion right away. Like
Oh,
this is so much, this
interesting.
makes so much more sense to my brain. And so she kind of convinced me, and it took me like a while to get it, because I was like expecting like, oh, well, where's the project management stuff? We need project
Exactly.
management stuff. And you don't really know when you first experience Notion, like, okay, yeah, it's DIY, but like you can do a lot custom to your own workflows. And so when that kind of clicked, that I could have a shared system with Marie, but then have my own thing that was like totally mine. Whereas like in Asana, it's all kind of like the same experience for every person.
Exactly.
That was what kind of sold it for me. And so that was when I just was going nuts as well on it and learning as much as I could. And so the origin of the course was basically Marie started sharing videos about this new system we were building in Notion, and people were like, "Hang on, what's that?" This
Yeah.
is before it was in the general you know zeitgeist of the time, and so we were she was just making these videos and sharing, and then people said you should make a course on this. So we had this course platform, we had experience launching courses before, and so Marie just
Mm,
started making
yeah.
making
Interesting.
Notion mastery in Notion.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
And you mentioned very something very interesting about tools. So I
Hmm.
was hearing about the mission of Notion, and it's not a system. It's not like the best project manager in town or the best to do
Hmm.
list. I think they are trying to build tools for the people, or to provide some tools so people can create their own tools to fulfill their needs or to reach their goals.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it clicked to me. So I had the same experience, but I couldn't understand. Um, and I know we come from the background of Microsoft Word or Excel, and you have a tool for everything, right? Yeah, this
Yeah.
tool is specifically for this kind of job. And with Notion, people keep asking, yeah, but what is Notion? And they try to uh, put a tag in what Notion is, right? Uh,
Yeah.
so, what would you say for a person that hasn't heard about Notion? Uh, What is this click thing that you think people still? I think no one understands still what Notion is, but what's your grain of salt on that idea? What Notion is?
Yeah, I think it's I heard recently the CEO of Coda actually talking about this difference between products. And on one hand, you have platform based products that allow you to kind of build any experience you want. And then you have these other side of things, which is like the pipeline products, which they provide you the tooling to be able to like sort of make experiences within a
Mhm.
certain like context. And I think he was kind of talking about Coda being more of a platform and Notion being closer to a pipeline thing where Notion provides you all of the
Mm,
tools to be able to build your own systems. And so, like, if you wanted to make an app similar to Asana in Notion, you could do that. If you wanted to make a project management system, you wanted to make a thing for managing your household, and it just provides these primitives,
yeah,
components perhaps, that allow you to kind of bolt together different systems and then connect it with other apps, via the API and whatnot, so that you can kind of make pretty much any experience you want. So traditionally this would have been the realm of applications where you have to design a
yeah.
custom coded experience to build that custom thing. And I think what it's sort of replaced is, it used to be companies would build custom content management systems, so CMSs, in order to manage their ongoing stuff internally. So I remember, like, literally, it's like maybe 18 years ago now, I built a web app for a company that did these displays at like conferences and stuff. So they built out these things for companies, and so they had like proposals and work orders and parts
Uh,
orders and pricing and invoicing and all this stuff. And so we built a custom web app that allowed them to manage all that stuff. So when they sent out an invoice to the client, blah 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 blah, and now it's like I could just build all that in Notion without
yeah.
having to actually write any code. So it's kind of supplanted this idea of internal tooling for managing workflows and organizations.
Oh,
So I think of Notion less as, it's not a project management platform. It could be,
it
but
could
it's
be.
more
Yeah,
of like, yeah, it's more of a workflow and organizational design platform, or pipeline, if you want to call it that.
pipeline. I like that idea, and I haven't heard yet the difference. I like that idea, and I think it's something we still don't have as people that are using tools to
Mm-hmm.
for our advantage. So I'm thinking about the personal computer, right? So what is a personal computer? What can you do with it? So you can do a lot of things. It's not just one thing. It's a box of possibilities. I think that Notion
Mm-hmm.
is something similar to that. And besides, so I want to switch uh, from tools and systems into mindset or ideas or um, yeah, that kind of principles.
Sure.
So you've worked with a lot of people. So we wrote about this 2 hours ago, I think. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so you have worked with a lot of people, individuals, companies. So in order to achieve their goals, they have a problem to solve, or they discover that they lack some principles or character. What's like the thing that you say, yeah, this is a common theme or a common problem that people need to overcome in order to achieve their goals?
Mm-hmm.
I will ask personally and then as a company, because I think those are different things.
I mean, honestly, I think they're very, I would actually disagree that they're
Oh,
different
interesting.
things, because I think that the thing that most people are trying to solve is communicating around change management. And I think Notion's a really strong change management platform because you're able to like document alongside the actual workflows that you're building around. And I think most companies and most individuals are trying to like capture information and respond to it and react to it in some way, and adapt to it over time. And so that's something that I think Notion really facilitates, is that process of like what are we doing here? how do we capture information, how does the company actually work, how do we communicate, and things like that. Because I think that 90% of most business challenges are just like communicating what we're trying to do together. um, and I think that that's similar on a personal level. It's always like it's more of a conversation with yourself though, about what am I trying to accomplish in my life. And I think that's why we see a lot of personal use have things like habit tracking, journaling, and stuff like that. It's a conversation that you're having with yourself about that change management. Where am I going? Where do I want to be? What's happening right now? Like being able to switch those contexts really quickly. And that's really important for both businesses and individuals, I think.
I'm making a
Does that
lot of
make
notes
sense?
on that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, that sparkled a lot of more questions.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know which one to choose now. I wanted to talk about communication because
Yeah.
that is one topic we talk about, especially in relationships. But before going into that, what do you think about habit tracking? Do you think it works? Do you think it doesn't?
Um, it's kind of a it's tricky. I don't think it necessarily is a yes or no, it works or it doesn't kind of thing. It's, it really depends on the person and the goals and what you're trying to do. I think being able to the key for changing and for habit is this idea of like noticing and naming. So like notice when a habit is being done or not done, call it out, and being able to like to review and reflect on what that says about you as a person. So like if you're doing a habit from day to day and you're able to track it, putting things on paper can make it feel more concrete for some people.
Mm-hmm.
But like I have a bunch of habit trackers in my journals, and I often don't do my habits. That the actual tracking of it doesn't really help me do it or not do it. So it depends. I think it varies from person to person. But um, one of the things that like Marie teaches a lot is when people are trying to talk about being more productive and being less distracted, is to start with something like Rescue Time, which is an application that tells you what apps you've been spending time in.
Oh yeah.
Because I think people have this
Oh, they can
idea.
see.
They have an idea of what they're actually spending time on, but when they go and look, it's like, oh, I spent 5 hours on social media today. Like, so like being able to
Huh.
track automatically, you can then reflect and make changes in your behavior, to replace those habits that you might have with like what. And Marie's actually working on a habit changing template right now, which is really interesting. But this idea that like you have to pick a habit that you want to change, and then you think about, and this is all power of habit stuff from Charles
Yeah.
Duhigg.
Yeah. I love
You
it.
can't really get rid of a habit. You have to replace it with a different habit.
Exactly.
So she's making this system in Notion where she's like got the bad habit, and then she can pick the good habit. So, and then
Oh
look at it
yeah.
from different directions. So, so when she's looking for something like, I want like, and how does that make you want to feel? So if you watch TV or whatever to feel relaxed, like what are some other habits that give you that same feeling, make you feel relaxed, that are not like consuming media? So um, yeah, I think some habit trackers can be useful, but as far as checking a box when you've done something, that's just information that you
Yeah.
use to make a decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like that idea of reflect on the things. Not is not the goal is not to check the box because everyone can do that. Like yeah, exercise. Okay, jumping jacks 3
Yeah.
check right. You need
Yeah.
to reflect on that. And I think for me, I habit trackers have been like masters that I need to obey, and
Hmm.
and it's more like a hard relationship between habit trackers and myself because for me it was the other way, right? I need to complete this, not in order to reflect, but to check the box, and that's it. And for me, it didn't work until I discovered more about habits, and I like the idea of reflecting on it. Uh, and I think that's you mentioned you want to go from point A to point B, and there are a lot of obstacles along the way. And I think, yeah, the bad habits are one thing that you can focus on. Yeah.
Mhm.
So uh, I have another two uh, questions. What are you trying to learn now, or to master, or to change? And I think that question is very related to what we just talked about.
Personally, what I'm trying to master?
Yeah. Or change, or you want to learn a new language, or you're trying to do this kind of project,
Yeah.
or
I'm trying personally. I'm trying right now to be less reactive in situations where there's like a lot of anxiety. Something
hmm,
really important to me, where like I think that you know Marie has mentioned before, my partner has mentioned that I tend to like shut down when things get like really stressful or something's out of my control, and my problem solving capabilities kind of go out the window. So on a personal level, that's something I'm working on right now, is like what are some better, and this is habit forming, right?
yeah.
Habit changing. Like what's something I can do when I get to that level of like anxiety that like I can self soothe and bring myself down. On a learning front, like I haven't done it for a couple years now, but for a while there, I was going really hard on learning Japanese.
Japanese.
And
Interesting.
so I would love to visit Japan one day for like 6 months or 12 months or something. And so I think that might be one of my things that I pick up in 2023 again, to start practicing my katakana and hiragana again. Beyond that, I'm always learning. I'm always taking some kind of course in firefighting to keep my skills up.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, I just finished my NFPA 1001 credential, which is like the baseline firefighting credential, and now I'm moving on to the fire officer courses.
And
So,
how many levels are there in firefighting?
uh, I mean, in the basic one, there's like firefighter level 1 and level 2. Like level 2 is kind of like your officer stuff, but then you can go past that to where you're getting into like the, you know, where you're a chief, or battalion chief, where you're in charge of a whole city. So there's
Wow.
also like the administrative side of the learning. So how to organize and run a department, how to work with government bodies, and then there's the educational side, the health and safety
Phew.
side. So there's so many different ways. Like it's a little bit it's a little bit like programming and like apps and products, where like there's so much to learn that
Okay.
you have to choose one path of like, okay, I'm going to focus on education and courses instead of like apps and the technical side of things or something like that. So
Huh,
um yeah,
nice. I like that. I had another question that, uh, sorry, I'm just throwing questions in between.
all good.
One of the question was, or is, what are some things that you know you are not going to do, because we can do a lot of things, but what are some things that you have decided not to do, but you really wanted to
Yeah.
do? It can be
Yeah.
firefighting or anything.
Well, so I made this a couple years back. I made like a life goals top 20 things I ever wanted to do, and it's part of this idea where you write down like 25 or so things that you want to accomplish, and then you just basically like cross off all but the first 3 or something like that.
That's so
These are the most
painful.
It's really painful. So some of the things I crossed off on that were like learn how to fix cars.
Oh.
I've always wanted to be like a good mechanic and really
Yeah.
like build. Like I have a friend he just gets an engine and then he builds a car from scratch by getting like parts and stuff, and I'm like, that's so cool. I would love to do that, but it's something that would take a serious time investment, like anything interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one thing that I'm like, yeah, I'm probably not going to do that. Um, Another one is probably I had a past where I worked for a couple years at video game companies. So I used to do Flash
Oh,
development, and I made games and stuff. And I released a couple games for iOS and Android back in the day when at my other company. And I've
wow,
always had a
that's
dream to
new.
do another game of some sort, but that's probably another one that I'm probably not gonna do, just because those ones tend to be massive amounts of work, like years of development and artwork and all that stuff. So
How
yeah.
many years did you take for one of your video games?
Well, it depends. So, like the very first iOS game I made was a dice rolling game. So you could like take the phone and shake it, and it would, and then let
Oh,
it go, and it would roll the dice. And that one took me probably like a month to make. And it did pretty well because it was like a very early iOS game, and so there wasn't that many games then. And then years later, we made a like a full featured game that had like 50 levels, and it was like tons of animation, tons of artwork, and that made about the same money as that first game,
oh,
just because
interesting.
the market was so flooded with games at that time. It was like right when kind of Angry Birds and stuff had just
Oh
come
yeah.
out and stuff like that. So yeah, but that one was like we spent 6 months probably off and on working on that, and but it was just a fun project. I had my agency at the time. We would get some like programming work or websites, and so like some of that money that we made we would use to fund like a couple hours a week on the game or something. So we'd have like a Friday jam where my one employee and I would work on artwork and animation and
You
programming all
did the
day.
artwork too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I'll have to send you. I've probably got a page on my old website somewhere that has the some of the artwork and stuff on it. But yeah,
Huh. And I can tell you like the artwork from your wall.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. I have a degree in I have a fine arts degree, and then I taught myself programming in the like
I thought
second
you were
or
into programming first. Huh.
no, I started doing programming because I took a robotics class in college, and I got really into like, well, how do I had these servos that were rotating these panels, and based on the position of the panels, it would like communicate with this server that I had made that looked up images or something. It was like
Oh
silly
yeah.
conceptual piece, but that was kind of where I got the interest in programming, because I'm like, well, how would I search Google Images or something for something, and and then like store it in some way that it could be retrieved later. And one of the professors there happened to be like an engineer and also, and he kind of was like, okay, well, we're going to need a database, and we're going to need a programming language. And so that was how I learned early, maybe PHP 3, I think it was back then. Now we're there on 8. And I learned how to write SQL statements in MySQL, and that was kind of like the beginning of my programming career.
Oh, so it was really out of curiosity, all your learning. Huh.
Yeah, pretty
Interesting.
much. Yeah,
Yeah, I was thinking about education and how um, more and more people are telling me, yeah, I studied this career, but then I got interested into this other thing, and uh, that's what they really do, right? But they have this other perspective, like arts. You have all that background, and you can bring it into another thing. So I
yeah,
really like how we can learn and take advantage of all the resources and courses like Ocean Mastery out there. And you don't have to spend 4 years. You can spend 6 months, right?
yeah.
Into something. So I'm very excited for the future of and present of education. Uh, wow, that was new. I'm really glad we're having this conversation. um, Another question is related to this one. Who was one of your best teachers, and what do you remember about him or her?
mm, I think probably that teacher was notable. He was quite a character, and so he was professionally trained artist, but he also was a mime. And in college, I was really into breakdancing, and I used to do dancing a
What?
lot. And so, yeah, so like, um, he would often sort of teach animation through his miming. So like, we would be doing computer 3D animation with Maya or something, and like in order to teach the foundational concepts of like how to make something look like it has weight or bounce or
Oh
whatnot, he
yeah.
would show these like how we actually move in real life, and through dance
Oh.
and stuff. And so like I was in this program it was called integrated media environment, so it was basically media arts, but we just got access to computers and like access to synthesizers and all kinds of weird stuff. And so people were just making all this weird, you know, art that was also maybe some performance and some like, movement and, 3D music, like just bits of everything. And I think like,
Yeah.
the fact that he saw like different ways to teach technical concepts through like actual movement, or being able to create a very unique, specific, like for me, like when I was expressing interest in this robotic stuff, like he basically created almost like a mini curriculum for me to
Oh, that's
to
awesome.
learn, and towards the end of that year, like I'd be asking him questions about programming, and he was like, you've basically exhausted my limit of programming, and so like, I recommend you do this and this and this next. And so like, that felt really awesome to have that somebody that saw like a spark in me and something I was interested in. And even though it wasn't really related to what he was teaching, he directed me towards like, something that
Yeah,
would appeal to me and would help me move towards that. So yeah, I'd say that's probably one of my favorite teaching experiences.
direction. I think that's a common theme, right? To have a direction where you
Hmm.
need to go and to have people that
Yeah.
guide you through that
Yeah.
or through
And
the
it's not,
path.
and it's really important that it's not like the same thing for everybody. You're not just teaching that same exact
Yeah,
flow through the information. Like there's people come to understandings, realizations at different times in the course, but also in their lives. And some people might not be able to like hear a certain thing that you're telling them over and over again until something else happens that is
exactly.
outside of your control. And so you have to be aware of that and notice that, and kind of move with them in a way. And it's like you're just sort of giving them a gentle push in the direction that you think they should go. It's not like a very like heavy handed, this is what you're doing, this is how you should read, this is the order to do it in. It's like, let us know what you think, and where you're going, and we'll try to adapt to that. I think that's a really interesting style of teaching.
Yeah, and I think that's something we are seeing more and more from people that are creative and that have actually enjoyed the learning journey instead of the school where you need to do XYZ. And this experience where you solve a math problem but you didn't use the method the teacher was using.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very frustrating. Um, and I want to talk about communication. That question. Um, I think well, there's to I would like to include the anxiety thing side
Hmm.
of things also. Uh, we've talked about relationships and how communication is very important in a relationship. How or what are your key ideas or principles that you would say, yeah, this is very important in order to have a very
Yeah.
good conversation? And what uh, have you struggled the most when communicating with other people? Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah. Um, so what's the most important thing in communication, and what have I struggled the most with? I think I spend a lot of time reading books around the concept of Marshall Rosenberg, I think is the author, nonviolent communication.
I remember that one.
And the core tenet of nonviolent communication is like this shared pool of meaning that you have to like you sort of fill the pool with meaning so that everybody kind of has a shared understanding of what's being discussed. And basically just reflecting what's being said to back to the what's being said to you back to the person. So like if somebody says like you're really upsetting me, like just literally repeating back to them like I've really upset you, and like just repeating back to people that kind of like so that they feel really heard. It's like a disarming mechanism in some way. um, and yeah, I think I picked up a lot from reading a lot of that stuff and trying to employ that in practice. It's very, very difficult, but I think it's worth trying. um, I think on a relationship level, I think and something that Marie and I obviously work on a lot is, just literally setting aside time to like be together and to talk about things. Like if you don't regularly do that, that kind of maintenance, like I think you start to feel quite insular, and lonely in some respects where you
Yeah.
don't feel like your partner's really listening to you. So I think that's another key facet is like just literally set aside time to just talk about things and like, you know, check in, even if it's just once a week. And actually like sticking to that. Because a lot of times, you know, we'll do this thing where we put something in our calendar and it's like awesome. And then we don't actually do it when it comes around.
Yeah.
Um,
Something came up.
so
Next time.
yeah, yeah. Like, oh, I'm busy. I'm focused on this right now. Like, can we do this some other time? But like, you know, actually doing that thing is super important. Um, yeah, and I think the same way about, you know, we do twice weekly team syncs with our team to check in, and we have this system of that we borrowed from Holacracy, which is called tensions, which in a
Hmm.
similar way as the, you know, A to B thing. The tension describes like where you are now and where you want to go, and so a tension might be something like this is bothering me and I want it to stop, or it could be
Okay.
like this is a really interesting opportunity that I think we should explore. So it's not necessarily like it's not like an issue tracker, it's a tension
Yeah.
tracker, right?
Okay.
So we have this system in Notion, for example, where anybody can capture a tension, and then we have a link to our actions database. So until we've processed the tension, it doesn't have an actionable item associated with it. But when we discuss it, it's like, okay,
Mm.
well, what do we actually want to do about this? Do we want to start a new project? Do we want to send an email? And so we have these like discussions where we talk about what's tense and you know, what are we going to do about it? And sometimes
Okay.
it's like we do nothing, like there's nothing to be done here, and we just say this tension is resolved, you know, that kind of thing. So we do that same thing every week where we're constantly checking in and taking like a little bit of a pulse of everyone's like experience of working together.
Yeah.
um you know, so leaving that space for discussion, super important.
I like that. I one of the questions I answer every day when I'm writing is what worries you, and I think it's similar to what things are on your mind that you
Yeah.
feel that you don't understand that are making you less productive or you can enjoy and you can connect with people. So that's why
Yeah.
I was thinking about anxiety on a personal level. I was very anxious. I think two weeks ago I actually have something on my neck that I started to scratch myself because I was very
Mm,
anxious, and I realized that I wasn't communicating enough with Liz, my wife. Uh, so yeah, I think communication is key in all relationships, work, and all that stuff. And I think we don't learn how to communicate effectively. That's not something they teach in school, and
absolutely.
we don't
Yeah.
have very good roles sometimes. Some of us do, but I think we need to talk more about it. And I really like uh, understand what the other person is feeling and
Hmm.
to confirm that. So thank you for sharing that. Uh, and well, I would like to talk more about this. You do a great job of tracking things that are problems, or you spot things that are not working, and I in my perspective, you're very good at communicating those problems. And we've talked about this. uh, how do you feel when you share things that are wrong, and most people won't say anything because they don't want to engage into a discussion? How do
Yeah.
you have the energy to keep going when they ask you, yeah, but what's the problem, or that's not wrong, and you think it's wrong, or you told me a moment ago, yeah, I disagree with that. So I think that takes energy, and it takes courage to do that. Not everyone do it. So why do you do it, and what has helped you to do that?
I think largely this is environmental. We kind of respond to conflict in the way that perhaps like, you know, our parents do, our families do. Culturally, this is going to be different, you know, like I think like my background is Eastern European.
Yeah.
Like Eastern Europeans are known for their directness, and sometimes that, you know, I've worked with you know, folks from Eastern Europe that grew up there and have even more of that cultural sensibility. And they're sometimes known as, and like Canadians can be known for to be very, very sensitive. So like
Exactly.
if you say like I don't know, I kind of disagree with you there, they can sometimes take that very personally. So when those you have those like cultural clashes that happen, you have to be very, very careful. And like I think my parents, especially my mom, was always extremely direct with feedback and would just say exactly what she was thinking, but it was never mean.
Mm,
And I love this thinking. I love thinking of myself as like I'm not a nice person, I'm not very friendly. People don't,
okay.
I mean, you may disagree with that, but like I don't think of myself as nice, I think of myself as kind. And so like I definitely think about that in all of my interactions, where like I want to say the thing that's going to help people, and I don't, but it's not like I'm not going to withhold feedback because it might hurt somebody's feelings. um and like so you see the end result of me like
Mhm.
thinking about things, and probably like where the way I actually feel about the thing versus how I write the thing is very different. I might
Yeah.
be over here being like, this is garbage, I'm really pissed, I'm angry, and then I'll be like, could we think about, like you have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
phrase it in a
exactly.
different way. And this comes from that nonviolent communication thing, and this idea that like, you know is it like, what am I actually saying versus like how do I actually feel here? Like if you're speaking from a place of extreme like frustration or emotion, it's not going to come out very well. And I, honestly, I second guess myself every day when I post feedback like that.
Mm,
Like, was that too much? Should I delete that? Should I edit it to make it sound nicer? Should we do a compliment sandwich where you say something
I
nice and then
know.
you give the feedback and then you get the other sandwich? So I don't know. In terms of how I've developed it, I think it's partially cultural, partially environmental, and just partially the way that my brain works. I don't have a lot of filters, and I kind of just say whatever's going through my head. Um, yeah, that's a tough one.
This sandwich, when I hear something nice from someone, I'm like, okay, he's going to say something hard next. So when I
You're
hear something,
stealing yourself for the for the
yeah, yeah.
for the other shoe to fall.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You don't enjoy the first comment nor the last comment because you know there's something in between those.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There's something that I definitely want to get better at. One of the things that I'm working on is asking in advance what type of feedback somebody wants.
That's very interesting.
Do you want do you want me to criticize? Are you just looking to celebrate? Like when somebody shares something and it's like clearly a bad idea, are you looking for feedback on this, like on ways to improve this? Don't just offer the feedback. And that's really hard for me. Like I immediately, like I have this desire a lot when people share things to be like, I really want you to do this differently because I don't think this is going to work for you, and here's
Yeah.
why, like that. But that's a lot of times not actually why people are sharing things. They're actually looking for you to celebrate with them. And like I have a really hard time understanding what those things are sometimes. Like is this a celebration thing, or is this a tell me what's wrong with this kind of thing? And so like asking in advance can be really helpful, because then you can, if they're like, I just want to celebrate, then cool. Like if you need feedback, then you know where I am, but don't just like, throw it out there. Um, but for something like the Notion community, I think like that's the whole point of us being ambassadors, is
Yeah, exactly.
to be like a front facing, helper for the company to figure out like what are people talking about, and what are they into, and what's working and what's not, and like what are you seeing in your consulting businesses, and what, because we are more like boots on the ground than maybe some of the folks at Notion might
Yeah.
be, in terms of the way that um, you know, like the way that Notion builds their product often seems like different from the way that we're all using it. Like we're doing these weird use cases that are, you know,
Yeah.
sometimes when you share something,
Agree.
they might be like, oh, that's interesting. So like, that's the whole point of having ambassadors, is like seeing all the weird and wacky ways that people might
Exactly.
use something as powerful as Notion, right?
Yeah, like having this communication, this breach of communication between the people that are actually doing, actually using the product versus the people that are building the product. So I think
Yeah.
that's a very important work, the communication work. Uh, I I think we need to learn more about this communication. And I remember one advice when we got married. Sometimes Liz wants to be heard, and sometimes I just want to express something. I
Yeah.
don't need an advice or something. I just need to express it, and same for her. But sometimes you need a hey, how do I fix this? I have this problem. Just give me the solution, right? And I think it's
Absolutely.
very different, very difficult to know if you don't have this relationship with the other person. So
Yeah.
I think we need to be braver to ask, uh, do you want feedback, do you want, yeah, I really like what you said. uh, so I've been enjoying our conversation. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I want to end with this question. What is something that you are trying to do daily that you think is helping you to improve or grow as a person, and that you would advise others to do?
Um, my my general like must do or non-negotiable, I guess you would call it, is some level of movement. So whether that's like a walk, I do a lot of mountain bike riding these days. Weights, whatever it is you're physically capable of. I think like that, keeping your body active and that movement is super important. Um, outside of that, it's like your health is really all you have at the end of the
Uh,
day, and so I'm trying to get better with taking care of myself. It's easier said than done, of course, but
yeah, exactly.
for me that's again, to go back to power of habit, this idea of a waterfall habit. If I get up first thing and I don't touch my phone, I go out, you put your shoes next to the bed, so that's like that signaler or whatever, you immediately put your shoes on and walk out the door. So that like waterfall habit, if I do that, then like the rest of your day is kind of set up for success and things flow a little more
Exactly.
naturally. um, so yeah, like this morning I woke up and yeah, I was like, oh, I should go for a run, and I didn't. And then kind of like my morning was a little bit like off. Like
I
I
feel
ended
you.
up on
Yeah,
Twitter. I was drinking coffee late, and then I finally started work at like 10 o'clock, and it was like, if I had gotten up and gotten going and just like left my phone there, like it would have been so much better. But
I
the
know.
continual struggle, I guess.
Yeah, those little things. I feel you, and but that's it. The good thing. Yeah, you can reflect what we were saying, right? Okay,
Hmm.
I see the result of this decision. So which path do I want to go today? This
Yeah,
one or that
yeah,
one?
yeah,
Yeah. So I feel you. I had a rule. I'm struggling the same. I cannot go to the bathroom with my phone. I try to
mm,
put my Kindle in the bathroom. So if I'm there, I need to read or
yeah.
breathe
It's a
or
good idea.
just yeah. So I've been trying to do that, but sometimes you're like, oh, this is very interesting. I want to see those tweets, right? Or I'm
Yeah,
watching a
yeah,
video, but if I break that rule, I don't read more. And if I don't read, I don't have the highlights. And if I don't have that highlights, I don't have ideas. So I think yeah, what you said about the waterfall. So I think habits are very important.
hmm,
uh, yeah, a lot of topics to talk about that. But Ben, thank you. I really appreciate your time.
yeah.
I
It's always great
enjoyed
to
the
talk to you.
conversation, and let's keep growing and learning and all that stuff. Thank you for what you shared today.
Yeah, thank you.